there's many people who can achieve something once, like they have some big success, but it's very hard for them to sustain that success.
Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to the Best You podcast. My name is Nick Carrier, body optimization coach and creator of the 10-Week Transformation. The mission of the show is to help you get closer to the best version of yourself in all areas of your life so you can live a more meaningful and impactful life. Today's guest is Jason Stacy. He's a world-class high-performance coach, speaker, and advisor to some of the best athletes, coaches, and business leaders on the planet, including world number one female tennis player, Aryna Sabalenka. Jason's story, I'm not going to lie, it's wild. He was homeless at 13 years old. He was living in libraries and martial arts dojos. But that experience helped him build the awareness, the discipline, and self-control that now define his coaching philosophy. Fast forward to today, and he's training, like I said, world number one tennis player, Aryna Sabalenka. And with his work is featured in Netflix Breakpoint, it's on ESPN, and it's been on Good Morning America. In this episode, Jason shares about what helped Aryna finally break through to win her first Grand Slam back in 2023. He talked about how she manages pressure and expectations and keeps her emotions in check, especially when the stakes are super high. He talks about what they did to fix her serving issues back in 2022. He talks about the three most important areas, the three most important E's that she manages every single week. And he talks about how to discern and balance the external expectations versus the internal standards. This episode is going to be huge, y'all. It's for anybody who wants to perform better under pressure, coach others more effectively, or build resilience at the highest level. So with that being said, it's time to get closer to your best you with Jason Stacy. All right, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Best You podcast. Today, I have a conversation that I've been looking forward to for, I feel like, a couple months now. Today is going to be special. It's going to be impactful, and I know you guys are going to get a ton from it. Today, we've got the one and only Jason Stacy. And Jason, you have such a story yourself, and how you have come to where you are today, but also you're the performance coach, both physical and mental performance coach for the current world number one women's tennis player, Aryna Sabalenka. And I know that she'll continue to be number one as long as you stay with her. Let's go, baby. Let's go. Keep her on top. Keep her on top. But the way I want to kind of start off the interview is on your story, and then most of it will probably kind of transition into the coaching that you kind of do with her. So I know that you were homeless from 13 to 16-year-old. Let's just get right into it. How did that come about? How did you become homeless, and then transition after that in terms of how did you work yourself out of that? Because I feel like when you're in a state of homelessness, it's probably very easy to feel like my life's over. I'm never going to get myself out of this. I've been homeless for 3 or 4 years or however long it totally was. And how did you work yourself out of that?
Sure. I mean, well, first of all, thanks for having me on, man. I'm excited as well. And I love how you start with like the easy stuff right away. That's good. Yeah, well, I mean, look, I mean, my father passed away when I was quite young. I was around 11. Um, and, my mother, I had two younger siblings. My mother, she was struggling quite a bit. We ended up straight away moving up to where her sister was. And yeah, I don't know, just things sort of just started falling apart. And it's really hard to remember like how it all sort of came about. It wasn't like some one big moment. I mean, obviously the big moment when my father passing away and, the house sort of just the stability of the home wasn't quite there anymore. And, my mom, she wasn't, she was a stay-home mom, you know what I mean? So suddenly now she's got to figure out how to take care of three kids. Um, so she was struggling quite a bit, just managing all that. I started helping out with had a couple paper routes and doing different things just to help bring money in and, look after my brother and sister, make sure they got to school and, sort of had to take over a bit of a role like that. And then I don't know, I remember at some point I had um, started babysitting. Like I went and started living at these people's houses to babysit these three kids, and that I ended up I don't know, just kind of it's a really weird story about how it kind of all ended up. But these kids were, the family there were a bunch of drug dealers, and they were just like had some problems. And the kids were all kinds of crazy, messed up, and I mean, no joke. I remember I was like literally just sleeping on the couch. The kids were all asleep, and I woke up because I heard a noise, and this little one had a knife, swinging a knife at me, like barely missed me. I just got out of the way, and it was like, what the hell? Like they were, I think they were, the parents were obviously doing drugs and doing things while they were, in the womb. So they were pretty messed up. I mean, I remember I found them um, at some apartment one day. I was supposed to go there to like look after them and help out with some stuff, and the kids like I went into the apartment just was open, and I'm like looking around for people. And none of the adults were there. These people. And the kids were like locked in a room together, these three kids just locked there. And I have no idea how long they were there for. So I just started looking after them and helping them out. And, that was just,
Were you doing this as a way to like make a little bit of money?
yeah, it was just to help out, make money, and to try to
Yeah.
find a way to, exactly. I just needed to do whatever. And how and where these people came from, I don't know. Like how they, I think my mother knew them, but she wasn't into like all the drugs and all that. But somehow, I don't really know. I mean, I was, like 12 or something at the time, so
Yeah.
I was just doing what I had to do. But um, yeah, it's kind of a weird story. So I don't really remember like even how that transition happened, but just ended up from kind of one place to another and in a lot of weird places. And then I remember one time. Um, Going back to where I thought my mom was, but there was nobody there. So I was like, okay. And I had no, this was, before there was like cell phones and there wasn't even internet. You know what I mean? So it was a long time ago. I'm 51, almost 52 years old. So this is a long time ago before all those things existed. So I was just like, okay. And just ended up staying with these people that I've met through these other people that were just a bunch of crazy bikers and doing drugs and doing crazy stuff. And I mean, one thing I always make very clear is I never got involved in any of that stuff.
Yeah.
I it had a thing from my father taught me that I just remember so clearly in my head. This story of he was in the Air Force, before he passed away, and I went to his work one day. I got to go on base, and I was like, he was a mechanic. I was climbing around all the trucks and doing stuff with him, and he was talking about his coworker was like basically about to lose everything. He was gone. He's fired because they found drug. He had brought drugs on base, and I just remember this conversation. I don't know why. It just stuck with in my head about like how just, at any cost, you never get involved with these things on any level. You don't do them. You don't be around them. You don't just, I just remember the story telling me, and I don't know why it just stuck with me. And even when I was in those situations, there was a part of me that just knew that like, okay, if I even cracked that door open a little bit and started doing the things these guys were doing, whether it was the drugs or just the behaviors, that, that was going to end up in the wrong place. I was going to end up,
Yeah.
seeing what I was seeing with all these people. And
Totally. So what got you out of this? I mean, did you have a feeling when you were kind of like 14, 15, 16 after this had been going on for, 2, 3, 4 years or whatever it was? Did you ever have a feeling of like, I'm never going to get out of this?
no, I mean it was weird because there was not a point. I mean, I did end up actually homeless. Eventually, I was kind of transitioned from there. I ended up in this place where they called it the Roach Motel. It was just an abandoned ex-hospital, like a tiny building. It was literally like I remember I was duct taping my wrists and ankles and clothes because there was so many roaches crawling around and spraying myself with whatever, and it was disgusting. It was just and you'd see all kinds of stuff. I mean nasty things in there. Like I remember this guy that I had met there, like we were hanging out, or just like guys similar age or whatever. And I remember we would, cool. It was crazy. But
Yeah.
just a lot of crazy stuff. Just basically watched his mom kill himself in a really nasty way
Mm.
in this
Jeez.
place. So it was like a lot of really messed up people. But I ended up running out of there, left, and then I just ended up being more on the streets and kind of in and out of weird places. And but
Gotcha.
it's really strange. Like people always say these kind of things, about like, oh, what they, when they talk about their past and about the things that they, were thinking and doing. And there's this one thing though that I just remember so clearly in so many moments, um, that and I don't know why, maybe it was part of my earlier upbringing, had a really good upbringing initially, the where I was at before that. And maybe just about something how I'm made. I don't know, just maybe some genetic thing behind there. Who knows? But I'm just saying that for me, it was very, very important that I had a really strong set of values. Like I had a really good, um, clear understanding of like who I was or who I wanted to be and who I knew I wasn't going to be.
Mm.
And that I needed to stick to that no matter what. Like
Yeah.
I had this very, very clear. And there's so many times where I got myself in a lot of trouble, sometimes like harmed really bad. Um, or end up having to like get away and like just go to a whole nother place and try to figure my whole life out over again, for lack of a better way of putting it, was was because I would stick to those values, because I wouldn't get involved with the drugs, because there was things I just wouldn't get involved with, and I refused. Whatever the cost was, I just knew I had to stick to those values, and I don't know why, but I just knew inside of I just knew, I just felt it that like I was just in this situation and I knew that it wasn't like something I did or didn't do. It was just this is where I was right
Just where I
now.
was.
But something inside of me just knew that I wasn't going to be here all the time. But the only way to make sure that wasn't going to be a permanent thing for me is that I needed to make sure I stuck to a very strong set of values, and that no matter what the cost was in that immediate moment, that I needed to stick to those values.
That's awesome.
That's
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah,
strong
strong
values
values
guide decision
decision
making. They
making. They
allow you to
allow
say
you to
yes
say
to the
yes
right
to the
things,
right things,
to say
to say
no
no
to the right
to the
things
right
as
things
well.
as well. So
That's
that's
Yeah,
awesome.
and how
awesome.
I
I
got
love
out of,
that.
oh, sorry. The way I got out of there, I mean, I go through some more details of the stories, but like the biggest thing for me was it was again, how I knew this, or it was just an instinctive thing, is just making sure that over time I was getting around, changing my environment basically as
Yeah.
much as I could. As often as I could, I would get into like whenever, however I could, I would get into a better environment. If there was people around that I thought, okay, I need to be more time around these kind of people, whatever I had to do to be around the people as much as I could, I would be. And one of those groups was a dojo that was like a neighborhood. It was, if you go and look at on the FBI stats of those years where I was homeless in that area, it was, like there's this bar graph of like the violent crimes in the US, and it's like way down here, and then ours was like off the chart up top. It was a crazy place to live, and there was like an adult bookstore and like a pub and a pawn shop. In between there was this rundown little dojo. I used to, sneak in there and kind of watch and look in sometimes, and eventually they let me train there and kind of
Yeah.
those that's, a
Yeah.
lot of how I got off the streets was just being in that environment, having a more positive environment to be around and a
That's
community to
great.
be a part of. So for me, it was always just realizing that I needed to be around the right people and that environment. If I can control that as much as I could, which was a lot of it I couldn't, that at some point it'll just keep getting better and better and better.
I love it. I love it. Like you said, the values I think was huge, and the environment was huge. To transition a little bit to Aryna Sabalenka, you started with her in 2020?
19, I think it was.
2019. Okay. So she's maybe around 21, 22 years old, I think, around that time. And she was kind of coming up, hadn't really made a huge name for herself at that point. She in 2021, then she made a couple of semifinal appearances, but never got over the hump of winning a Grand Slam title or anything like that. And then in 2022, had a little bit of an inconsistent year. And then 2023, she finally kind of got over that hump of winning the Australian Open, the first kind of Grand Slam title of her career. What do you think was one of the biggest things in terms of her mindset and her performance that allowed her to kind of finally get over that hump and get the super coveted first Grand Slam title?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we started probably more when she was around 19, just 20. So it was a little bit earlier
Okay.
than that we started. And I would say that moment winning her first slam was an accumulation of just so many little things over those years. We had worked on, you know, her physicality, her ability to, control her body, that awareness, the physical side of things. There was things that she had that were very good, but there was also a lot of things that were missing. There was a lot of disconnection, right? A lot of dots that weren't quite connected. There was some pretty clear things about her emotional control. So she had this like fire inside of her. She was very strong, a big fighter, but she was just all on emotion. So just running pure fire, which was her biggest strength, but also her biggest weakness, right? Because that would either it would either hold her back and destroy her in the middle of a stressful moment, or it would help her overcome something. And she had no control over that. It was just inside of her. And the other part was a bit of her environment, just like the coaching environment, the people that she was around before that. So it was literally just a long, long process of helping her, physically become more, aware. The one thing that was also missing was there were some technical things that she needed to work on.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
wasn't really ready to address those. That was one of those things where it was like we don't talk about this kind of thing. So I was like, all right. So started working around the whole other thing, helping the environment, try to bring them, the right people in the environment for her, working on the physical side of things, slowly helping her, with how she, realizes how she's thinking, how she's processing stuff, how she's sort of processing emotions internally, but then how is she expressing those emotions, and when and how does she, I guess, use that fire for her strength, have more control over it rather than letting it control her.
Yeah, well, let's stay on there a little bit. I want to dive a little bit deeper into that. So, like you said, the physicality, the emotional side of things, and the environment. So, the emotional side of things, obviously, like we deal with emotions on an everyday basis, but let's talk about tennis in particular, like inside of the actual match, because it can emotions can be super high after one point and super low after the next point, and super high from game to game and from set to set and everything like that. Um, and as you mentioned, it can be your biggest asset to if channeled in the right way, but it can also be your biggest detriment if not channeled in the right way. So like, what tools or things uh, does she do or have y'all talked about doing in the middle of the match when, like, traditionally in the past, maybe frustration would overcome her and lead to poor performance? How have you taken that frustration and channeled it in a different way?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there's two parts. Obviously, there's when you're in the moment. That's the most difficult, right? That's the most difficult for anyone. When you're in that fight mode and you're in that, just tunnel vision, combat vision, whatever you want to call it, depending on the environment, it's very difficult to pull yourself out, right? To find that place again. There are some things that you can do, but there was two parts to that. One is over time helping her become more and more aware earlier and earlier of like before she gets into that spot where she's out of control, how to recognize it on the way there and trying to
Mm.
make sure she can recognize it as soon as possible. So then she can start to act upon it earlier, right? So before it gets to that part, because for some people, when you're there, it's like, okay, you're there. We're just gonna like race through this until it burns out and see what happens at the end, right? So again, no real control over it. So I think that's the first part is that build that awareness of yourself first, and the second is the awareness of the environment of what's, what things are happening, what patterns are you seeing that typically lead you down the wrong way. So often for her, it was her attention would be in too many places. And when she would narrow that focus, so the attention kind of narrowing that attention down to be more focused, it was making sure she was focused on the right targets because the wrong targets could be focused on, and that's when you're going to go sort of, down that wrong path.
What do you mean by that? Focusing on the right targets? Like, what are those right targets? Like, is it specific things in her game? Is it not really looking at the crowd, or is it like just looking at you, like one of her coaches? Like, what are those right targets?
It could be a number of things based on that moment. Some of that nowadays it's more like, what she feels what she needs to do. So some of it is yes, what I would prefer, and which I can get to now, the point of when she's in the moment, when she's in there, what do you do? And focusing on something that's physical, right? Something that you can control, no matter how you're feeling, right? Because when you're in the mess, you know what I mean, for like a nice way of putting it,
Yeah.
it you have a lot of things, especially with someone who's very emotionally, sort of driven. It's very difficult to just think your way out of those things, right? To mantra your way out of it, to visualize, all these different things, right?
Yeah.
That everyone likes to talk about. Well, the reality is it don't work, right? The reality is like what you need to do is find a sense of something you have control over. So it might be like there's two things technically that she was, some tactic that she was supposed to focus on is like bringing her back to like that task. Go back to this. So like, this is plan A, and if that you start to feel your rhythm is off and you're not hitting those shots and you're just off. Okay, this is your backup. This go to this. There's a couple shots that is like her shots where if she's just not feeling that rhythm, that timing, then she'll go back to this particular shot until she finds that rhythm again, right? And that's like her
Mm.
go-to where she's just like, doesn't matter how she's feeling, she can pretty much 9 times out of 10 she's gonna hit it. So that kind of gives her that like kind of reset, right? And then she'll
Yeah.
build back upon that. It could be, yeah, focusing on one of us. It's usually Anton, the tennis coach, because that's what we, all agreed on is like it needs to be one voice, one person, one, face, even though we're all right there. Um, Again, just so there's not too much, attention going anywhere. It's
Totally.
just gonna be very quick, very clear, very to the point. But I prefer to use physical things because my point, as I said already, is that if it's a physical thing you do with your body, like how you're moving, how you're standing, or more importantly, I'd say how you're breathing, that is in your control, regardless of how you're feeling, right?
Mm.
And what it takes, though, is just a little bit of discipline, just long enough to create a habit, right? Just enough discipline to do it, no matter how you're feeling. Because if it's a little bit late, it feels really annoying and stupid to do it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you're just like you kind of get that hangry, like I don't care. You're just gonna, you just want to prove yourself right that you're mad and the world's after you, or whatever, right? So you're just gonna go whatever.
Yeah.
So it just takes a bit of discipline, recognition, that awareness, like I said, and a bit of discipline to do the thing, no matter how you're feeling. And so we picked a lot of breathing techniques, right? It was things to focus on, which again, the physical thing, usually a technical, excuse me, a tactical, physical thing that she could be doing. Like this is my shot, just focus on that till you feel it again. And the other is the breathing.
What are these breathing techniques in the middle of the match? And if so, what do those look like?
All the above. It could be before, during, and after. It could be at key moments. It could be the it was really subtle initially. It wasn't really something that, for a while she didn't realize that she was doing it. It was just more, okay, every time you have a moment of a pause, like at changeovers. So when they're, sees the tennis players are sitting down, is her focus was to just slow down her breathing. So take a nice deep breath in, hold it for a few seconds, exhale as slow as you can, right? And then what you would do when, do that a few times, and it just kind of helps, it lowers your heart rate, right? But what it does also, I'll tell you the thing. Yes, how you breathe, like breath control is emotional control, right? That's 100%. How you breathe, it definitely there's some specific ways of breathing to get you into a certain state. That goes without saying. But I'll tell you this though, especially with someone who's already a high performer or they're really high sort of, hot-headed or highly charged up. Um, I don't typically worry too much about exactly how you have to breathe. Breathe exactly this many seconds and do it exactly this way. All I want them to do is to have like a generic, like a general way of like, look, like I said, just take a deep breath in and hold it for a few seconds.
Yep.
Then maybe that's it. Or hey, you know what? Just focus on every few breaths. I know because you're probably going to be out of breath a little bit. Just try to like force yourself to breathe slower when you exhale. Like, just
Yep.
something really simple, one little piece, not much detail. Because all I want that really to do is yes, physiologically that definitely changes states. It shifts over more parasympathetic. You're more, think more clearly, make better decisions, all that kind of stuff. But one of the simplest things of what it's doing, it's forcing you to focus on one thing.
Yeah. Focusing on a right target, not a wrong target.
Well, exactly right. So there's all these noises going on in your head, all these voices, all these things going around and around, and they never go away.
Yeah.
They never go away. It doesn't matter how skilled you are, how experienced you are, those are always there. But what the champions do, what the high performers do who can sustain that performance, is they recognize it earlier. They try to find some level of sense of control, right? And what they learn how to do is turn down those noises. They understand they're still going to be there, but they just turn the volume down so they can
Right.
hear that one thing that they've decided they're going to listen to.
To stay on the a little bit of the other noises, I'm sure that depending on where the tournament is that she's playing, the crowd is going to be more for her or less for her. Like, so for example, if you're in U.S. Open and she's playing someone like Coco Gauff, I'm sure that the crowd is going to be very for Coco and not very much for her. Are there different like things that y'all talk about before going into a match compared to when a crowd is expected to kind of be more on your side versus when a crowd is not expected to be on your side? Are there different things that you need to think or focus on in those two different scenarios?
Not so much. I mean, it's not really something you have to talk about because you just know. Like she's gonna
Yeah.
know, certain she already knows. She's been around long enough. She'll know who she's playing if the crowd is going to be more kind of leaning toward her or the other or the opponent, and that's okay. And she just loves if there's a really good high energy environment, she loves it, even if it's against her.
Yeah, I was gonna say some people I think like beating the crowd more so than the crowd that's on their side sometimes.
Yeah, well, I think what I like what she likes also is when the crowd isn't obviously going, cheering more supporting for the opponent, when you start to hear that shift,
Yeah.
or they're starting to kind of like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
but
that's awesome.
yeah. So it's not something that we need to. There's a lot of things that we don't really need to speak about. It's sort of
Right.
understood, right? So it's
Gotcha.
more about again bringing things back into like, okay, these are things that are in your control. Here's some simple things that you're going to do technically that and strategically and tactically Anton will speak to her about. Physically, how we warm up will vary based on her like what the arousal level needs to be, the intensity level. So there's four main things that I focus on it, for our, generally speaking, to perform. So right leading into and then during, you have to manage four things: your arousal level, your intensity level, your focus, and your attention. So those four
Okay.
areas, what you want to do is find that perfect balance of each for you, for whatever it is you're about to do now, like next, right? Whatever you're about to face.
You said arousal, intensity, focus, and attention.
Yeah, those are the four things that I focus on. And I typically again like to use more physical things, so like how we warm up, the types of exercise and movements and small sided games and how mobility, breathing, whatever we're doing.
In terms of arousal, is that a matter of like looking at something internally in terms of like a wearable technology and seeing what her current state is, and okay, should we need to get her more jacked up, or she's already jacked up where we're pretty good where she's at, or what does that look like?
I mean, look, we have like the Whoop, for example. We have these things we can see her heart rate, what's going on with her HRV and all that, and we utilize those all the time. But in that moment, we're about to go step out on the court. We're not like
Yeah.
looking up data and trying to figure out what her biometric stats are, this and that.
Yeah.
You can see it, right? You can,
Totally.
and look, I've been with her 7 years now, so I know I can see like if she is so over time. So this takes a bit of practice. So if someone just starts doing this, for example, it takes a little bit of trial and error to figure out one of the tools that work for you in those moments to help you become more self-aware. And when you are in a place where you're not performing your best mentally or physically, what are the things that help kind of get you grounded and get you focused on the right targets again? Just takes a bit of practice to figure out what works for you, right? There's a handful of things that we know typically work, but you got to figure out what those things are and how to apply them for you and for the various situations you might be facing. But to go back what we were saying, the arousal levels is I mean, she knows herself pretty well. We all know her pretty well now. I've been with her the longest of any coach that she's had. And so there's like a sweet spot, right? There's like a sweet spot that, for you that you this is where you perform your best. You see, I've been in a lot of sports and a lot of locker rooms over the years, right? And you see, like if let's say you go into a team environment and the whole team's getting ready to go play, and you'll see some guys in the corner with their headphones on, quiet just by themselves doing their thing. And of those group of guys, there'll be some guys listening to real relaxing music, somebody listening to some sort of like motivational thing, some will be listening to hyped up music, right? It all depends on what's best for them. Some will be walk around talking trash, talking shit to everybody, joking around. Some will just be quiet, doing their own thing, stretching. Like, they've all kind of figured out what they need to kind of get in
Yeah.
that perfect spot for them to perform their best. And so we know what that is for Aryna, and I can see, right? And I also know like how she's looking at the match, if she's a bit more, a little bit more pressure on herself, a little bit of this, the expectation. And so if I feel like she's coming in and she's like, over aroused, a little bit too much arousal for what she needs to be, and she's going to go out and just like burn her, just go too much, then we'll sneak in some extra breathing stuff, a little extra mobility, a little bit of maybe like a type of game where I know that she tends to get distracted and kind of goofs off and has fun, so just kind of lightens herself up a little bit. If she's a bit too, I don't think aroused enough, for example, like just a little bit too flat coming in. Okay, we're gonna make sure that we're gonna do things that are more like a lot more reactive, a lot more of interactive, a lot more just stuff to get that
Totally.
stimulus. So just
Yeah.
to find her, make sure she right when she walks onto the court, she's in the right state. And that
No, I
again,
love that.
how she's breathing, how she's moving, and so we can tweak those things to make sure. But luckily, for her she was open and willing over the years to open up that sort of look at herself, look herself in the mirror, look at open herself up to be more coachable, to be more vulnerable, because initially she was not. She was very,
Yeah.
typical, Eastern Bloc country, her father was like an ex-pro hockey player, very big, strong man. And, she was just, it was all about like, you don't speak about your goals and what you want because you'll lose it if you do. You know what I mean? You don't
Mm.
share things. It was all just in her head. And, as soon as she starts to like open up, be more vulnerable, be more coachable, put herself out there, um, that's when things really started coming together. And actually, you mentioned before about that year where everything kind of came around. She won that, she had that year that she struggled. So we were,
Yep.
top five, top two. We were number two in the world for a long time. Then we had this one year where it was a serve that just was like, again, remember I said from the start we knew technically she had some things to work on, but it was one
Yeah.
of those like she'll go out and work, she'll do whatever, but like certain things she didn't want to talk about, didn't want to really break apart a technical thing. And you find a lot of athletes are like this, right? They'll have certain things like we don't talk about it. What I mean? I just watched an interview with Andy Roddick the other day, and he was talking about over the years, many times his serve was big, but it was, technically wrong. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
but it was like a no-go zone. You don't talk about it. We don't touch it. With it works for me. I don't care. That's how his attitude was, right? So she was
Gotcha.
very similar in her ways. Um, but this year there was some technical things that started really falling apart, and then it became a mental thing. So she's going out there with 20 things in her mind about why it's not working and what's happening and all this kind of stuff. And it came to that moment. I wasn't traveling much that year. I was pretty unwell in and out of the hospital a couple of times for some just weird things. But there was this tournament at San Jose. It was like I don't know, halfway through the year, lost the same way again, just like 800 million thousand double faults and just losing her mind. She's on the ground, she's pissed off, she's crying. And I just look at the guys, I'm like, listen, guys, is it just I'm taking over again? This is what's happening. And I told her, like, listen, we're done. We're done. All of us, we're finished. We're not going to keep doing this. I know she had a lot of strength to show up week after week. You know what I mean? Like, basically knowing she's going to humiliate herself, not having a clue how to fix it, what was going on. But she had the strength to show up. And that was that sort of young fighter, that fire inside of her. But what I always like to talk about is, I like to take the people I work with and that have that in them, that they're that drive, that grind, that hustle, and that's great. But to me, that's just like from a combat sort of background, combat sports sort of background. That's like those young fighters. They're all motion, and they're always just surviving, right? They're grinding
Right.
and surviving. but you want to shift more toward that warrior mindset where like you get to choose the battles and how you're going to fight them, right? You get to like have control of and everything you're doing has purpose and intention behind it, right? And that's the real power, you know. Yeah, you can still fight. You still got that strength and that ability, but you get to decide how it's going to be used. You're going to show up on a match and you get to dictate the pace, right? You're gonna decide what's gonna happen that day, nobody else. You're gonna
Yeah.
show up with your strengths and your strategies, and you're gonna apply them to their biggest weakness, and that's how it's gonna be. So in that moment in San Jose, I was just like, "We're done," and she's like, "Well, we've done everything. We've done everything." Well, there was that one thing we've never did, which was actually work on the freaking serve, and technically, and I knew a guy through a friend of mine that was very good at this biomechanic thing, and I was like, "Look, this is a choice. We're all leaving right now. We're done for the season." Or bringing this guy in. And she was rock bottom. She's like, fine, let's do it. And she was ready. And she opened herself up. And to her credit, like she showed up, coachable, listened, applied, and it like all really came together for her. And then a few months later, January comes around, Australian Open champion. And we've
Yeah.
won 4 slams since then now.
That's awesome. I'm sure you kind of mentioned a little bit of obviously it being technical, but some mental. Obviously, most things are a little bit of both. In terms of mental, I don't play a ton of tennis, but I play a decent amount of golf. And when you're stepping over a shot, you want to have like one swing thought because if you're thinking about your head and your right hand and your hips and the weight distribution, like you're going to be thrown off. And you're thinking like, don't miss this shot, don't scold this shot, don't shank this shot. You can't be thinking about all of that. When like before a serve, is there like one thought before you toss that ball up of how to execute that?
Hmm. I think that answer to that would vary from player to player, like what
Right.
their thought is. I think from my side, I would say I agree to have one thought. Ideally, not on a physical thing like, oh, watch my hand, some external
Right.
sort of thing. I think it's more about like a rhythm and a feel. You don't want to, because I think if you think about a movement, a part of the movement, right, then the movement typically doesn't go very well,
Yeah.
right? As soon as you become more conscious and thinking about, oh, I got to make sure my elbow goes this way, my wrist does this, right? You'll find that typically, you need to have in those situations more of like an external cueing, like from a fitness industry, from training, right? External cues are often a lot easier, quicker in that moment than some internal cue, especially when people don't have that connection with their body, or
Right.
or like trying to tell someone to squat and you tell them to activate certain parts. And they kind of do it in a just disjointed way, but you get some external cue about like as you're going down, like, imagine you tap your bum to the wall behind you or something like this. Suddenly they
Right.
move really well,
Totally.
right?
Totally.
So it's the same kind of thing. So I think it's more about that rhythm. Like some of them, it's the bounce of the ball, get that rhythm, and they just want to like have that flow, just let it go.
Yeah.
So, but again, I think the thought that they may have or the 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 way they control their thoughts in that moment, I think would vary on various players. But many that I've spoken to, speaking about tennis specifically in this moment, is
Right.
just that the bounce and the timing of that rhythm. They want when they get the feel, they get the ball, and then they just let it go.
Totally. Well, I mean, I think that's so translatable to most physical things. Is don't necessarily think about one physical thing. Think about the rhythm. Think about the feel that you want to have when you're actually going about it. I need to translate that to my golf game a little bit. But you mentioned one thing. You mentioned one thing about expectations that I wanted to touch on. So, like we kind of mentioned, now she's number one in the world. And basically, every time she steps on the court, she kind of has the expectation, the external expectation that she should win, she should win, she should win. How does a top player in the world manages those expectations? Do they know the expectations and they hear them and they try to not let them affect them? Like, how do you actually manage the external expectations from other people?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. It's a big one too because I think it's in everywhere in different parts of life and different sports and different activities where when you're most of the time you're chasing something, right? There's a target, a goal, a focus, like there's this thing that you're driving toward. And then suddenly now you look in front of you and there's no more target. Like you are the target suddenly,
Right.
right? And so that's like, okay, there's a bit of a shift there. That's why, you know, there's many people who can achieve something once, like they have some big success, but it's very hard for them to sustain that success. And
Totally.
so I think two parts. One is how you end up getting and achieving that success will help you sustain it. So like planting the seeds and laying that foundations for like that again, that awareness of yourself. And for me, we talked about a book off air earlier. Like I'm writing this book, and it's literally about what I call the 3 E's, this performance operating system, right? And that is learning how to manage your emotions, your energy, and your environment, right? And there's different layers of those things. But as you go, if you continually auditing those things and improving and managing those things, then like it's you. You're the one who made that success happen, right? You controlled and designed your environment. You are very specific about who's around you and when you spend that time around. You're aware of how different environments influence you and how you influence them. You understand your emotional processing, like how things making you, how you react to certain things, respond, and you're constantly learning how you're going to express those emotions, right? You
Yeah.
understand that energy management is the most important thing over everything, right? That is the most important thing. Mental and physical energy management is like the foundation for all these things. And all those three E's, for lack of a better way of putting it, they all influence each other, right? One influences the others and vice versa, and around you go. So I think first of all, to get there, you need to be able to understand those are I put it like this, all the programs and the strategies and the systems that you see everywhere and everyone talks about. Every book is written about it. To me, those are like the apps on your phone, right? And
Yeah.
these three E's, this is the operating system of that phone. Those apps are only as good and are going to work as well as your operating system is,
Right.
right? And I mean, think about your iPhone. How many apps do you have on there now? Probably a ton. And that's what everyone's always chasing, the next program, the next this, the next that. And again, we need those things. They're important. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they're useless. You need those things, and you need to keep improving those things. But they're only going to work as efficient and as effectively as your operating system. And if
Yeah.
just like your phone, if you're not constantly updating that OS, right? What happens? The battery doesn't work as well. The apps are closing. Things just don't work quite the same anymore because you
Right.
haven't updated your operating system. So really, I think the key part is actually more about how you get there than it is what you do when you're there.
Yeah.
Now, when you're there, to go more specific to your question, I mean, you're never there, right? There's always something to work on. I look
So
at,
you got to have the mindset that you're never there. So when you have high expectations from external things and external people, you have to realize like, or you have to be like, yeah, but I still haven't reached my peak yet. I still haven't reached it yet. I still haven't reached it yet. I still haven't reached.
well, think about this. I mean, some people might think it that way. I think of it more like this, is that, if we'll talk about tennis since we're here. She's number one now. Besides this expectation part, the environment itself, like the opponent, the tournaments that we go to, the way the point system works, the way the scoring of the game works, all these things, nothing's different except for her ranking,
Yeah.
right? The same thing is on the way there, even up to the day where she became number one in the world, like there was still some things that we had to practice every week. Throughout the year, there's things that like, sometimes your forehand's a little bit off, sometimes the serve's a little bit off, sometimes you physically a little bit off. There's always these things, excuse me, that you're just constantly cycling through. You're still showing up to a match for whatever the reason, whether it's coming from you or the other player is just hot on fire that day. You're still facing those moments where, things aren't working well. For whatever the reason, you're still facing the same things. The concepts and the things that you face, these situations never change. But what does change is that the lens that you use to see what's happening, how
Right.
you how you interpret what's going on, right? Just give me one second. I just get some water real quick.
Very good.
I've been talking a lot lately. Excuse me, sorry. So the idea is that, we're constantly cycling through things, right? And I look at it as are we spiraling upward, meaning our level is improving, our experience, our awareness is improving, or are we sort of circling around and chasing our tail and getting nowhere, or are we spiraling downward, right? Obviously, we don't want to be going downward. And
Yeah.
if you want to be a high performer, you want to be successful, you want to sustain it, you're not chasing your tail either, right? You can't stay where you are, otherwise you'll start to fall back. So nothing's really changed. We're always facing those same things. The same Aryna is still Aryna, right? Who she is still the same, right? So the way she'll have moments and she'll have weeks or matches or moments where that old Aryna, that old young Aryna still shows up, right? Hopefully she's able to manage that, that younger version of herself and be aware of it and do something better about it. But, there's always something to go. And the pressure is there in a way too that you think about it. You have to know that just because you're number one doesn't mean anything. The girl
Right.
on the opponent on the other side, in fact, they're at an advantage because they got nothing to lose.
Right.
They go play out of their mind and there's nothing for them to risk.
So in terms of managing expectations, you're just kind of like, we don't even really think too much about the expectations. We just always go back to our systems, the foundational things that we need to continue to work on, continue to prove on, and continue to hone in on.
Just it's very simple. Exactly. We
Yeah.
fundamentals, constantly fundamentals. Maybe looking at a few tactical little strategic and tactical things that you might if see where like your weaknesses are. If you like, if I was going to play you, where would I attack you? And
Right.
just making
Totally.
sure that you're filling in those gaps. But yes, it's really just about make. I know it's going to sound cliche, but control the controllables,
Yeah.
the fundamentals, the basic. Like there's no magic pill. There's no
Totally.
secret. The same. You're literally just cycling through the same things, right? And yes, there's a lot of other things like more expectations, more obligations now from press, from media, from sponsors, from fans. And so there are a lot of things that you have to manage, but that goes back to that managing your environment, making sure you have the right tight group of people around you, right, to keep you, grounded and keep you
Yeah.
focused on the right targets. And also managing your energy, making sure that where you're spending your time and who you're spending the time around isn't draining you. It's like
Yeah.
it's charging you up.
Along those same lines, to just go there, are there things or like systems y'all have put in place that helps her decide what to say yes to and what to say no to if she gets offered this, you know, brand deal or whatever it is? How do we think about this? Yes or no? If she gets offered to do this trip to hang out with these people, how do we say yes or no to this? Like, are there systems that y'all use to manage the energy and environment?
I mean, the system is that tight group of making sure
Yeah.
we're communicating.
Yeah.
So it's, our agents, Stu and Andre, who's our hitting partner, but also like a manager now. He started off a hitting partner, but now he's the more of her manager and helps with the agency stuff and all the sponsors and brands and all that. So when things come up to to him and Stu, the agents, about, invitations or and whatever, even I'll get invites for her for big events and whatnot. Anton and I will go through this and we kind of work out the schedule of like yes or no, or yes, but only at this time. And if we can't do it, then we're not doing it. So it's really more about prioritizing what we need to do to make sure she could keep performing, because all those things are only here because she's performing well.
Totally.
The
100%.
reality is if she's not performing well, those aren't here.
Yep.
Doesn't matter how friendly everyone is and how, oh man, we love you guys so much. Yeah, because she's winning. We understand
Right.
that. But the other part is also understanding that her career as a number one in the world professional athlete, that's only a small percentage of her life. So it is
Yeah.
important that she does these things, this networking and build her business and her brand, so that way she has some financial stability and a future outside of tennis.
Totally. Well, I think it's important, right? Like, I think it's important that you guys mentioned that keeping her performance at the top is basically the number one priority. And so, like, if doing this brand deal, for example, might take so much of her time away where you feel like it's going to affect her energy and therefore negatively impact her performance, then, like, yes, I know it's going to be for a lot of money, but it's not worth it because her performance is going to fall away. So, like, having the performance is kind of like the baseline North Star can help the decision making.
Yes, and another thing that's I think is very important, just as important, is that um, ensuring that the brands or the opportunities or the events are in line with her brand and her values
Totally.
and our team values, right? So if there's products that we promote or get involved with, or if there's events that we're going to be around, is that they have to be, again, that core part of our environment, which is knowing your values and making sure you're aligned. Because if you're not aligned in these stressful pressure moments and in life and in business, like that's who's going to show up. The more aligned you are, the more strong you are, the more stable you are, the more easily, the more clear decisions you can make, the better actions you'll take. So it's also ensuring that the things that we're doing are in line with the values of her as a person and as a brand. And the last
Yeah.
thing I would say is making sure that some of these things we do, even if it's going to maybe be a little bit like, that's not ideal, but it's something that she really enjoys, then we'll say yes to those things sometimes too, because it kind of gives you a little bit of enjoyment of your life. It
Yeah.
kind of
Totally.
charges those batteries. So yeah, while it might influence like the energy on the court for a little bit, well, it's going to recharge her batteries over here because she's just something that she really wants to meet that person, or really loves
Yeah.
doing these kind of photo shoots, or doing the, great, let's go do it. Now we just understand that that's going to take some time away and energy away from our main focus, right? But we know that and we understand that,
But
and
it's
so then
worth it.
we
Yeah.
we plan around it, and it's okay because we have that ability to adapt. So
Totally.
it's a few different layers there, but yeah.
I'm curious. Do you guys go into a new season or a new calendar year setting goals? And if so, like, what kind of goals do you set? Is it like outcome related goals where it's like we want to win all. I mean, I always am interested for athletes because it's like if you don't have the goal of wanting to win every single match, then like, are you actually a competitor? Because like the idea should be like, I want to win all four Grand Slam titles. But do you say like we want to win 2 out of 4 this year? Do we want to win 5 tournaments this year? Or are they goals like we want to get the serve to this miles per hour, or we want to get this percentage of serves in, or we want to do, yeah. How do you guys go about a goal setting process when going into maybe a calendar year or a season?
I'll start with a bigger thing and then go down to like more specific. So in a way, and in a lot of sort of high stake environment, people that I've worked with, high pressure environment, high performers, it's really funny because I know that it's a gazillion-dollar industry talking about goal setting and how important it is, and you need to have those goals if you want to be successful. But it's just strange because a lot of the best performers I've met, the ones who could get there and sustain it, often the way goal setting is sort of talked about and sold, we look at that as almost like a limiting factor. Like think about this. How often do we talk about focus on the process, not the outcome? Don't look at the scoreboard, just focus on the next shot, these kind of things. Well, if I'm focused on I have to go achieve that goal, isn't that like an outcome I'm focusing on? So why am I drilling to everyone telling, hey, don't focus on the outcome, focus on the process. But then I say to do that, I need to focus on an outcome. You see the weird sort of
Yeah.
cycle you kind of get through. So personally, I think yes, it's important to have some sort of direction that you're going and clarity on what that direction is. And I look at maybe there is like some bigger, thing that you would like to achieve, but understanding like you just put it there, okay, that's what I'm working toward. But understanding that that is not my focus. Maybe occasionally I'll think about it and it's a little bit of a motivator for me, right? Depending on the person, maybe more or less.
Yeah.
But it's more of those little day-to-day things, right? Things that you feel that is giving you a sense of control and feel that is going the direction you need it to go, right? And I think those are the biggest things. I think it's a lot more about learning how to regulate yourself versus being focused on motivation, like these outcome things, these goal setting things. Learning how to regulate those three E's, like I said, really paying
Right.
attention to how to regulate yourself. Motivation is important, and we all need it. And you need a lot of different types, internal, external motivators for sure. So there's that first bigger part. But the smaller thing is, of course, Aryna has goals. Before she won her first slam, that was her biggest goal. I want to win a slam. She was winning everything before she won a slam, and it didn't matter. She could have won everything over year after year and retired without winning a slam, and she would feel like she was a failure.
Yeah.
So of course we have these kind of goals of like wanting to like, you know, keep winning. Right now, obviously, we've won twice US Open and twice Australian Open, but we've missed Wimbledon and French Open. So in a way, you might call it a goal that we want to win all of the Opens,
Of
right?
course.
Maybe it's a bigger goal of winning all four in one year. Like, so we do have those kind of goals, but it's not stuff that we focus on at all. We don't talk about it. It's not part of our day-to-day
Yeah.
conversations. It's just one of those things that we all kind of like, we understand. We want Wimbledon right now. That's like, we want Wimbledon really bad, but it's not something
Totally.
we're worried about. It's more, you know,
Well, I'm actually interested. I just came up with, like you said, she has the goal of winning as many Grand Slam titles. She doesn't say that. She doesn't focus on it all the time, but she has the goal of winning as many Grand Slam titles as she possibly can. But I guess like and specific to maybe tennis and maybe specific to her career, are there times where like, you know, Wimbledon's on grass, French Open's on clay? Are there things where it's like, okay, we really want the French Open this year because we have not gotten that? There are different things fundamentally, tactically that need to be done differently if we really want to win the French Open this year?
yeah, and that's actually a good question because it's going to the point of the goals that we typically have, or that it's more like, well, what are we focusing on right now? Like,
Yeah.
what are some patterns that we realize that, a lot of because everyone's watching you, and everyone now knows all your strengths and weaknesses and your tactics and all that. It's like, well, you have to keep evolving. You have to make sure that your fundamentals and your tactics, like your game plan, is the strong as it possibly can be. But also, you need to understand you have to evolve and have a little bit of like, be able to have some areas of ability to adjust and adapt. So it's often I know, like with Anton, for example, being the tennis coach, him and I talk every day about how we're going to approach the next day, and then also the bigger picture, like what we need to work on. There's been some things fundamentally that she's always struggled with, and we know that she's going to kind of struggle with, but we try to limit that lack of a better word, weakness. So it's not a limiting factor, right? So what we'll do is we'll look at what limiting factor, like what weaknesses that we might have in our game, and our strategies, our tactics, our physical, our mental, our routines, whatever that might be considered becoming a limiting factor, right? Or an area where people are starting to notice. And so we want to make sure that we're addressing those so that any weakness that we may have does not become a factor that limits our success. And so it might be like a simple thing of like I know right now that they're working on some two specific things on court, like a tactic, right? And that's what we really want to like really get her comfortable and confident, just to be able to do that during matches and have that in her back pocket when she needs it. And so that's
Right.
that's kind of goals were just more day to day ongoing. So it's
Yeah.
not really yeah.
Yeah, just things that you're focusing on to achieve the unsaid goal of, continuing to win as much as possible, essentially.
And I would just add a little thing is again, like I said before, is yes, you're number one, and yes, there's new expectations, and yes, it's kind of, it's a surreal thing sometimes, and it's hard to stay on top. Obviously, it's always been a big thing for everywhere you go, right? You see like, running races. No one goes or sprints out in front. They all kind of run with the pack until a certain strategic, their particular plan of attack.
I think a couple other things that I want to ask before we get out of here is to stay on the expectations, or to go back to the expectations. We talked about kind of external expectations. I also know that internal expectations are massively even more important maybe than external expectations. How do you think about managing those? Do you think about going in with thinking like, I either win, or like this thing is a complete failure, or you think I just got to play my best or give it my best effort? Uh, how do we manage expectations so that if you maybe don't hit a good shot or play a great game or have a great set, that you don't let it derail you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of things, but the simplest one is okay, simple, not easy, maybe, or easy, not simple. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Is just knowing the fact that you are going to make mistakes, and sometimes they're going to be because of you. Sometimes it's because of your opponent, and
Mm,
that's the way it is. Like I don't know if you saw that speech that Roger Federer gave recently, like a little while ago, about like his percentage is one of the greatest of all time, and he's barely won just over 50% of his points.
yeah,
I mean, it's like a coin toss. Like,
it's
so you have
crazy.
to understand that you're not gonna win every single point. That's just how it is, right? You have to just be like, okay, next, next, next. Focus on that being present as best as you can, right? Being grounded and present in that moment as best as you can. Learning how you work best to maintain that presence, right? That
Yeah,
state that you need to be in. Understanding there's a lot of variables there. Like with Aryna was like with that serve issue is yes, it was a technical thing, but from my perspective, like, okay, yes, I knew it was some technical things that we didn't know, but we knew there was an issue, but we didn't know how to fix it, right? So we need to bring someone in that specialized with that very specific thing. But what I needed and what we needed as a team was for her to know and have that clarity of like, okay, if she hits a serve and it lands over there, she knows exactly why. Oh, you know what? Because my toss was a little bit too in front of me. Oh, because
yeah,
my left hip, my right hip didn't do that. Like it's not like it was it this, was it that, was it could be this or that. It was like as soon as she hits it, she knows that
right.
one thing of why it did work or it didn't work. So
Mm,
now she has that power, that control. And so because you have that, right? You're not thinking about all these other things and wondering and worrying and trying to figure, problem solve, then it frees up a lot of resources for you to just stay in that moment,
totally.
right? And so there's a lot of different things from physical, mental, the technical, tactical, that if you just really have your fundamentals, your game plan, your backup plan, if you need to have a backup plan, then it just allows you to like, you know, manage those expectations because again, you're going to have them, right? So I'll tell you one of the sayings I always like to say and that we have on our team is that we don't fight it, we don't feed it. All
Mm,
right. We just understand it is what it is. Okay. We try to figure out what parts of this thing that we can control, and then we prioritize those things that we can control. Right. Understand that sometimes we do need to feed this thing a little bit more because you need to be understand that hey, that we need to pay attention to this. Sometimes we need to not maybe we need to fight it a little bit off, right? But when there's this pressure, this expectations, this stress, the more you try to fight it, the worse it gets. The more you feed it, the more you become a victim,
mm,
right? And so you don't fight it, you don't feed it. You find that perfect balance for what it is. Understand it is what it is. what have I done or not done that is in my control, right? And then we're going to prioritize our actions to manage that as best as we can.
Totally.
And if you're just constantly doing that, and to that point, but also to go back to the thing I was talking, I forgot that I was going to say, is that through this entire journey, when you talk about expectations, you talk about now we're number one and all these different parts, it goes along with what you asked me just now and then just previous, is that this is why I sometimes struggle answering these questions or helping people understand is that nothing's changed. Like we're not acting different. It's like, oh, we're number one now. Now we have to do this and we got to watch that out. Now we got to be more. If we start getting over crazy about things or like, there's all this thing now. We have to do this. Well, we're done. Right? Like nothing's changed. If you saw Anton and I, because we started with her, all these years now, and he came on, maybe the year after I started with her. So we're like the old school guys with her. If you were go back and see how we were behaving and acting and how we responded when things didn't go right, when things were really bad, it doesn't look any different. We're still who we are. We have to be that strong, steady base. So when she's out here going, something's going like, oh my God, like this is going wrong, this is bad. And we're just like, okay. And what caused this? What can we do about it? We just go through that process and we're like, yeah, we're not overly freaked out about it. We're not fighting it. We're not feeding it. We're just we give it what it needs
Totally.
and not what it wants.
No, I think that's such a huge takeaway for everybody to take away from this interview is that just because when you get successful, that doesn't necessarily mean things need to change. That probably means things need to continue to stay the same. Like you said, you continue to go back to the controllables. You continue to go back to the foundational things that got you there, those routines, those rhythms, and continue to focus on those things. Last thing I want to ask, though, is there's obviously a different aura when you go into a match that's a Grand Slam title match versus round one of a non-Grand Slam tournament. And everybody else in the crowd feels it. Obviously, you're going to feel some sort of different way. And I'm a huge football fan, and I know a lot of teams, if they have a rivalry game or a Super Bowl, let's say, they'll be like, we're not treating this week any different. We're not treating this game any different. It's just another game. But to an extent, that's obviously impossible because you are just going to feel something different internally. So how do you find the right way to approach going into this year, let's say she's in a French Open title or in a Wimbledon title, she's going to feel a different type of weight or a different type of pressure because it's a Grand Slam that she has not won yet. So how do you kind of coach her in the future going into maybe one of those titles that she has not won?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's a great question. And when we figure out, we'll let you know. No, no, no. There's always a plan. Again, it goes back to what we're doing before that moment, like the weeks and weeks leading up to that. Everything is showing her and giving her that belief. Now, we don't like to use the word confidence so much, but that really strong belief in the team that all of us are there for the same reason, that we're all there being consistent, that we're all making sure that each of us are making sure that we're all performing our best, that we're doing the things for ourselves as coaches as well to ensure that we can show up our best self, right? Because it's not just about Aryna, it's about all of us. And we all are doing that for each other all the time. We look out for each other. So we have that really, really strong foundation and that belief in each other, belief that we're doing the right things. And then just throughout that process, you're just planting those seeds and pointing out just subtly here and there that we are doing the right things, that everything that we're doing is to put all the pieces together in the moment that we need it most, which will be like in your question would be, when we show up to French Open. Like what we're going to do this coming season compared to what we did last season, we've already discussed some changes we're going to make because 2 years in a row, actually a number of years in a row, we showed up to French Open already depleted mentally and physically, usually getting sick, right? We had last 2 years where she got a virus, got really sick for both these last two French Opens. And so it's like, okay, we need to understand how we're going to manage that energy so that when we show up, we're fresh and ready. Doesn't matter how we feel, but we need to be fresh enough to compete. So what are the little things that we can tweak? So her understanding that we're always looking at improving these things and that she doesn't have to think about all these things. That we're all looking after each other. That she can just let us know. She can say something to Anton and she'll know that I'll know what happened. She can say something to me and she'll know that Anton will be aware of it. Right. So she knows, she's the same with Andre as well. Like, so I think it's more about ensuring that environment is the right people, that there's that belief and that trust in the environment, and that you're showing each other that we're here. We're all here in the moment. We're all here together. We're all doing the right things. We're doing the best that we can. And when we're not sure about something or we need more help, we go and find it,
Yeah.
right? And then we bring that in and we make sure. So I think honestly, it's more really about the lead up than it is that moment.
Totally. Well, and you have to, I think it's remembering that, like remembering that in the moment, right? Remembering that every little thing that you've done over the last number of months, the last number of years, all the little things is what provides you the belief that I can do it today. I can do it in this moment. And the belief in the team helps that as well. And so get yourself out of the moment and focus on all the things that you've done in the past that have gotten you there, and realize that you're there for a reason and that you're set up and ready to perform.
I tell you, think about it this way. Like, I can remember this one jujitsu match that I had. It was a pretty big one. It was an international competition. And a couple of the guys that were in my bracket, they were like professional. Like they were like traveling the world. They're just fighting all the time. They're MMA, they're coaching, they're doing this and that. And I remember I'm in the bullpen waiting, and the guy that I had to go, he's like, the weeks leading up, friends were sending me videos of his fights, and they'd make talking trash like, "Oh, this guy's gonna kill you. He's gonna rip you apart," And he's like, this guy was like, from UK somewhere, pro fighter, had all these wins, and I'm like, I'm traveling the world doing it just because I love doing it. You know what I mean? I'm like a recreational guy. I'm not some professional fighter or whatever. And I get on the mat, and the thing is I felt bad for him. And you know what? I want to know why? Because I was on the mat, and so was my coach, so was the big boys behind, so was my team.
Yeah.
Like I literally felt like they were on that mat with me. And that's the feeling we want Aryna to have. She knows that she's out there by herself, but she's not alone. Yeah. And so having that support and that base, that allows her just to go out there and be free. She
Mm,
knows that if she goes and does her best and she applies a strategy that we all agreed on, and she did all the right things as best as she could in the day, and she loses, it's okay. You lost doing the best that you could. And it's understanding, was it something that we missed or that she did or didn't do? Or was it just, that day the opponent was just smarter, better, whatever, like whatever, on fire, all the stars aligned, whatever it was. And
right.
just knowing that you have a safe environment to work on your edge, that no one's going to say or do anything that's going to jeopardize that trust that we have. And that, when we show up to those big moments, that we're steady, that we're stable. We're not up and down. We're not over aroused. We're not getting caught up in the moment. Even all of us, all this extra media, this and that. No, we're staying humble. We're staying in the moment. We understand that what got us here. We understand we have to evolve to maintain that, and that we're here because we're here together because of all the work that we've done together, and that because we've built this environment, right? We've purposely built this environment to be a winning environment, and so we don't mess with it in
Yeah.
that way.
No, I love it. That's
Yeah, so
great.
that's a really big part of it all.
I know. I kind of feel like that's what people need to respond, or how people need to answer when they're like, "How are you going to treat this? It's a big Super Bowl. It's a big Grand Slam title." Instead of saying it's just another match, it's like, well, no, I have belief that I've done all the things leading up to this point, that I'm supposed to be here. I'm going to perform well, and I know that all my team members, man, they've done all the things that they needed to do over the last number of months, the last number of years. They've prepared, they've put in the work, and I know they're right behind me. So I know that's setting me up to perform at the best of my ability today too. So that's what I'm focusing on. I'm not focusing on all the other hype, all the external noise. I'm focusing on all the little things that me and my team have done over the last number of months and years.
Imagine 100%. Imagine this too, and I'd see this with my kids too. They play a lot of sport. And a lot of other people I work with is, when she's out there, there's times also that motivate her because she knows that we've killing ourselves to make sure that she can get out there and do her best. So
Yep.
she's not just doing it for herself. There's times where that motivation comes because she's doing it for us as well. And
Yep.
that's why sometimes when she loses, she gets disappointed. If she loses a certain way, like she feels embarrassed for the team. She feels bad that she let us down. There's at
Totally.
times, right? So there's a really big thing. So again, it goes back to what I said, what you were talking about. We don't fight it, we don't feed it. Yes, it's a big moment, it's a big tournament. We all feel it, we all know it, and we try to feed off of that. But we try to understand that, okay, we need to stay stable and strong, right? We don't need to be too overexcited about stuff. Just keep going. And then at the end of that very last match, that's when we're gonna just go, Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's
Whatever
awesome.
that might be. So yeah.
That's great. That's great. Well, Jason, this has been a blast, man. This has been so much fun hearing, obviously, a little bit about your story, but then getting into the internal workings, both of your head and Aryna's head, a little bit on how to maximize your performance, how you become world number one, and most importantly, how you sustain that world number one. Man, I'm super excited for whenever your book does come out in the future. We'll make sure we promote it as much as possible, maybe even have you back on or something like that. Excited to watch Aryna this year, maybe win some more Grand Slam titles. You guys need to make sure you follow Jason on Instagram. We'll have his we'll have that in the description down below. We'll have his website down below as well. Is there any other good place that people should go follow you or learn more about you?
Just actually currently set up the new website. So just the coachingsweetspot.com, but the Instagram and LinkedIn, just jasonstacy.coach. Come find me, reach out.
All right, you guys. Well, I appreciate you guys listening and watching here today. If you're listening on the Apple Podcast app or on Spotify, make sure you hit the follow button. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit like and subscribe. And y'all, this was a next level conversation about the internal workings of what it takes to be a high level performer. So I know you know somebody that would like to perform better in their life. Make sure you share it with them. Send them a quick text, hit that share button. But other than that, appreciate y'all joining today. Jason, that's all we got, man. Thanks.
Hey, thank you. Take care, brother.